Our next speaker this morning is Angela Dixon, a new friend of ours, and new to our community, I think. Angela is the Senior Vice President for Diversity, Equity, Inclusion at the Berkshire Bank. And she's one of my favorite things to tell you about Angela is Berkshire Bank, sort of did this move toward the east and moved sort of headquarters to Boston. And that hurt us all a little bit in the Berkshire region, to see them sort of go. They've always kept a big presence here, of course. Angela actually lives even farther west in the Albany area. And I was like, all right, that's great. Moving the center of gravity back out towards Berkshires. So Angela, please come up and tell us about your work at Berkshire Bank. Thank you.
Okay. Well, good morning, everyone. I thought there would be a little bit of break, so I just hope I don't have lipstick all over my face, because that mask is kind of challenging. Okay, so that's good to know. I have just absolutely been inspired by the folks who've already spoken, so I'm going to kind of bring it back to the banking industry, so I hope I don't put anyone to sleep as I talk about some of the work that we're doing, but I really do appreciate this opportunity to be here and talk about some of the things that we're doing at Berkshire that, after having listened to some of the speakers, I don't know that it's innovation per se, but we're working toward an innovative approach to how do we reach folks where they are, right, in our communities. And I just wanted to share with you kind of a couple of concepts that we have worked out through last year that we're really modifying, but we learned a lot through that process. So if you would just give me a few minutes to do that, I'm really happy to share this with you. I do want to just give you a little bit about my background. So as Jeffrey mentioned, I am the Chief Diversity Officer for Berkshire Bank, and I joined them in February this year. But prior to that, I've had more than a 25-year career in public service, so state and local government, and always with some portion of it being equity-based work, whether it was fair housing, equal employment opportunity, ensuring that folks' rights were upheld from sexual harassment prevention, domestic violence abuse, and ensuring that we have processes in place to support individuals. So I've always been a part of this kind of effort. But then to have an opportunity to work with a financial institution that really is well steeped in our community, as a community bank, and really looking to be that socially responsible leader in our community. So that is the affinity that I have for the work that I'm doing. Berkshire has been very much committed to ensuring that there's equal access to folks wherever they are in our communities. But we really want to step that up more recently. As we know, we have been through so much as a nation, as well as a community, and all this transition, whether it is dealing with COVID-19, what came to bear in 2020 around social and racial justice. And so to be able to continue this work, I think is so meaningful, even from this vantage point. So when we think about innovating for inclusion, we look at it in the context of our strategic transformation with emphasis on social responsibility. This year, Berkshire Bank celebrated its 175th year in business. And Berkshire is an $11.7 billion business. We have 107 branches in the New England and New York area. I like the name Berkshire. I love being in Berkshire County. I happen to be so close to you. It's nice to feel welcomed here. But I really want to speak about the fact that even in our strategic transformation, we're looking at recognizing our roots as a community bank while re-emphasizing the commitment to being the leading socially responsible financial institution. So what does that mean from a diversity, equity, and inclusion point of view? I believe that it means that we take not only an internal perspective on what we do and how we do it, but also ensuring that we're responsive to the communities in which we live. So what does that mean? It means greater awareness and understanding of the value of diversity. We want to address the needs of the underbanked by establishing trusted relationships versus processing financial transactions. We want to create financial products that are accessible and that truly meet the needs that have been unmet. We do want to create opportunities for growth of businesses owned by people of color, individuals of the LGBTQ+ community, and other traditionally marginalized groups. So in 2020, we responded to the impact of the global pandemic using that uncertainty and the economic upheaval as an opportunity to work together toward common and mutually beneficial goals. We are guided by our Be First values, and these values really do emphasize the importance of inclusion and belonging. We want to ensure that our services respect and include individuals regardless of wealth or income. So innovating for inclusion means that we want to be able to respond to those diverse communities within our footprint, ensure that we are partnering with community leaders and nonprofit organizations, and we want to increase our connectivity and creativity, furthering our commitment to sustainable, long-term, and deep relationships. We want to emphasize the importance of being engaged with individuals regardless of where they are or where they come from. And we want to ensure that we do this with intentionality. So I did want to just do a quick overview of, just our strategic vantage point of diversity, equity, and inclusion. This does not work if it is a side business or something that we do because it's just the right thing to do. It is more than the right thing to do. I believe there's an economic imperative that we do this well and that this is a strategic priority across all lines of business within the bank. So we do want to enhance mortgage lending. We do want to make sure we're attentive to the needs of small business. We want to increase lending in low and moderate income communities. It is our goal to always expand access to financial wellness and education and ensure that we are walking the walk. This includes supporting individuals, entrepreneurs, minority and women-owned businesses through concepts like Revex Labs, as well as provide access to capital through our newly revamped Futures Fund. And I'm going to focus on those two components shortly. So before I get into Revex Labs, I just wanted to share with folks that in 2021, the National Urban League issued its annual report on the state of Black America. The report highlights that close to 17% of Black households and 14% of Hispanic households lack basic financial services compared with 3% of white households. The data, while captured in 2017, the last year that the FDIC reported it, also foretells the devastating impact that COVID-19 had on very diverse communities. We know that the federal government, after some time, was able to pull together the payroll protection program. But for folks who did not have a relationship with financial institutions, they were left on the sidelines. So let's talk about how Revex was an approach that we want to use to really start to address that issue, and I believe an innovative and creative way. So the goals were to enhance the financial well-being of those who have been disproportionately and unfairly underserved. We want to work with entrepreneurs, small businesses, and individuals to achieve their financial and life goals. And also, as I mentioned earlier, collaborate with nonprofits to ensure that there's access to technical assistance, professional development, and financial education. So I feel like this has been the theme of what we have heard this morning, that we do need to meet people where they are, and we need to provide people with what they need, not what we think they need, but what they truly need in order to be successful. So Revex became the how we were going to deliver these services, and also what we're going to deliver. So when I talk about the how, it was to ensure that Revex would be embedded in the community. So as an example, the first one was put in place in Roxbury, Massachusetts, and we just opened one in Springfield. And this is to not only say we want to be about and support the community, but show that and demonstrate about our presence in the community, because we know how much value that has. So why minority-owned businesses, right? So let's talk about some of the other statistics. Minority-owned companies contribute significantly to the U.S. economy already, with more than 4.7 million jobs and capital market of more than $700 billion in annual revenues. But many Black and Latino businesses do not reach their full potential due to what? A lack of coaching, connections, curriculum, and capital barriers. And that's according to EY.com. So folks are looking at the significant financial impact. So when we had embedded REVEX in the community, we wanted to make sure that we were meeting the need. So as I mentioned earlier, 2020, the initial rollout of PPP, folks left on the sidelines, but with REVEX embedded in the community, look at what we were able to accomplish. We were able to close more than 110 of these PPP loans, resulting in $6 million in lending. And as you probably are aware, in 2021, that's when all the forgiveness activities took place. So think about that infusion of cash into these businesses. Community engagement became key, but with the impact of COVID, what would have been in-person, hands-on workshops became virtual. But yet, we were able to provide more than 150 hours in workshops on financial literacy, lending, small business, et cetera. And we worked very closely. When I mentioned the role of nonprofits in our communities, that is real, because those folks have their hands on the pulse of what's happening in the community. So we work with the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts and the LGBTQ+ Chamber to create what was called the Futures Fund. And that was our ability, that gave us the ability to roll out additional access to capital for those businesses that were hurting at that point. This year, with REVEX, I mentioned that we opened another location in Springfield, but we have a partnership there with Valley Venture Mentors, whose mission is to help entrepreneurs. We want to turn their business ideas into thriving, scalable businesses. We also are very happy to offer, at this point, this fall, what we're calling a retail pop-up program. So we have space where entrepreneurs can come in and do their proof of concept, right? Share their products, share their services, get feedback from potential customers. So we want to assist them in moving from fledgling idea to actual startup. And when I hear about all the things that are happening here, we are very much in alignment with that, but again, from the financial institution point of view. And there'll be ongoing programming featuring classes on financial wellness and the like. But a key aspect to it is folks are not in this alone. They have access to a REVEX relationship manager who can support them in any way that they need supporting, whether it's access to additional products that the bank offers, or whether it's just that ongoing mentoring and coaching and support, or what other opportunities are available to them in the community that they may not be aware of. Some of the products that we offer include the My Freedom Checking, which is a no-cost checking account, access to a line of credit, and also the Futures Fund. So let me tell you a little bit more about the Futures Fund. Just prior to the issuance of the PPP program, the two nonprofits that I mentioned earlier come to the bank to say, we need to really support our minority-owned businesses. We might be more than familiar with the statistics that more than 40% of minority-owned businesses closed their doors shortly after COVID really took hold in this nation. And they had shuttered. They could not move on. We did not want that to happen in our community. So collaborating with the two nonprofits, we did develop the Futures Fund to provide access to capital. We would provide up to 10% of gross annual revenues to the business with a maximum line of credit of $50,000, with no origination fee, no documentation or closing fees assessed to the borrower. And the funds, unfortunately, were only available in Massachusetts. But we were trying something new. It was a different approach. So having made it through 2020, and we had made a number of loans, we then want to take a look and say, well, is this really needed? Because it was actually created under an emergency declaration. And what we found is that, yes, as we know, the need still exists. So I just wanted to take a moment and share with you the impact if we do not support our minority-owned businesses. According to the U.S. Census Bureau, Black Americans make up over 13% of the U.S. population, of the nation's population. I think now that's probably around 14% with the recent census data. Yet, we accounted for fewer than 2% of the U.S. businesses. In research conducted by Andre Perry and Carl Romer, they state, we have yet to experience an economy that is inclusive. We can't predict what would happen if the drag of racism was removed from various markets, but if Black business posted similar numbers to non-Black businesses, the country would realize significant economic growth. So when I think about what Berkshire is doing, it is truly recognizing that there is growth in this sector that we have not truly maximized. And we all have not only responsibility to do that, but we will benefit, right, across the board if we're able to do this and do this effectively. If Black businesses increase their average revenue to the level of non-Black businesses, it would increase revenue by Black businesses by more than, now I've mentioned the $700 billion, this is saying by more than $676 billion. So when I think of that, I think of it in terms of leaving money on the table, right? And we don't want to do that. And so if we have everyone fully engaged, these are the things that we can do. Gallup also conducted recent research to determine that there are no statistically significant differences in performance between non-Latino and Hispanic whites and Latino or Hispanic and Black people. Rather, the underrepresentation of Black businesses encapsulates a myriad of structural barriers underscoring America's tumultuous history with structural racism. Because of discrimination in housing and lending, would-be Black business owners have significantly less startup capital than their non-Black peers. And those are just the facts as they are today. But I think that summits like this, bringing folks together as we are today, really does fuel our desire to ensure that all these businesses are adequately supported and that they can expand. So in Innovating for Inclusion, our Futures Fund, which we're going to continue, will provide funding assistance to small businesses that are owned by the underrepresented populations. And this includes beyond people of color, LGBTQ+, veterans, the disabled. We want to support all businesses that have been traditionally marginalized and business owners. Berkshire Bank will continue to work with centers of influence, our referral partners, to identify prospective borrowers, and we're so happy to be able to expand this across our footprint. So wherever we're located, this will be available. Entrepreneurs in the Springfield and Boston area will continue to be referred to REVEX relationship managers, and our other locations are my bankers who will be there and available to any and every entrepreneur that is interested in accessing these programs. And we'll continue to provide a business line of credit up to a maximum of $50,000. So I just want to close by saying that we continue to be committed to not only the entrepreneur, but whatever those financial needs are, as we try to ensure that everyone has equal access to not only information, but to capital into the future. We want to be a part of making every individual, family, or business owner's dreams come through to having financial access, financial wellness, and a financial partner. And so it's really an opportunity and a privilege to be able to talk about the two programs that were put in place to be responsive to what was happening in our communities at that time, and recognizing that it provided really good information as to what we can do, what more we can do to really be accessible and a partner in our community. So with that, I'll close. Thank you.
I wanted to ask, I know that I had an opportunity to attend the Revex Lab opening in Roxbury, and I wanted to know, is that going to come to Berkshire County? Because ultimately, I just think it's a beautiful program. I had a chance to see the wraparound services that you guys had with that. And then two, I'm glad that the Futures Fund program is continuing because, and wanted to know, are there any other new fund programs? I know you guys also launched a Friends and Family last year, and just a bit of information is, as chairman of the Black Economic Council last year's steering committee, if it wasn't for BECMA and Berkshire Bank, we wouldn't have had any opportunity to get the technical assistance for Black businesses. I know that Elegant Stitches received the Futures Fund here directly based on that introduction, me working with Black Economic Council. So I'm just saying that I think that Berkshire Bank is doing a great job in that space. And I just want to know, is Revex coming here? Because I see that as another great anchor in this particular community.
Thank you for that question. So a couple of things I want to make sure that I mention. Lori Kiley, who some of you may know. So Revex actually reports up to Lori. So one of the things that we have been working on is, while there may not be a particular location per se, we want to take the same concepts that have been very successful with Revex Labs and bring them to other communities. So I would say that's a yes, but it'll look a little bit different. But we know that there's been a lot of success in being able to highlight and support entrepreneurs, especially when folks are really in that very early stage and they want to get something out there to just start to get some feedback. Is this going to work? Can I take this to market? What more do I need to know? So those concepts are expected to be brought throughout the footprint.
I wanted to ask him, and Ken Turner touched on this last night in his keynote, the importance of home ownership, owning real estate, and it's so hard sometimes for first-time home buyers. I was wondering how Berkshire Bank is helping folks looking to become first-home buyers.
So in an interest of disclosure, I would say that this is the one thing that appealed most to me about Berkshire, because it really is an organization that is always looking for how best to really support folks financially. And one of the things that I talked with the COO about at the time was the importance of home ownership, and that when we look at the racial wealth gap, the lack of home ownership has been a significant factor and continues to be. So one of the things that we're looking at, even as I speak, is coming up with what are the gaps and what are the reasons for those gaps. And when I say the gaps, it's not solely related to folks who don't own a home yet, but it's related to the fact that there is so much funding out there for first-time home buyers. Still there's a gap. So what is that missing component that gets a person from, yes, I like to own a home, but no, I'm not going to the bank to apply for that mortgage? We need to figure that out. So we're in the process really digging deep and saying, what is that we can do to either take advantage of all those funding streams that are out there and available to folks that they've not yet tapped into, or what is that missing piece that prevents them from coming in? And I just want to state that when I talked about that trusting relationship, that is key to home ownership. Because if anyone has gone through that process, you're divulging a lot of information. And I don't know that this person really has my best interests at heart, or am I just another application? Do they really want me to, help me to live this dream, or are they checking the box? So when you're that first-time home buyer, people sometimes need much more hand-holding than it might be for that one getting their third or fourth home, right? And so do we have the right people in place to do that? That could be a barrier. For some folks, English is not their first language. That could be a barrier. So what are we going to do to proactively, right, look at what we could do better so that we can attract folks, so that we can get to that homeowner piece. So that's an initiative I'm very excited about, because I think it all fits, right? When you look at that financial piece, all of that fits together. So thank you for that question.
Well, and if you'll indulge me a follow-up question, I think all of us in this room would aspire to do better and more, to be inclusive. And you just said something I think that's really important, is that building trust is the key. And I was wondering, and this is maybe an unfair question, but do you have any advice, suggestions, strategies that you can share with us for all of us to help build trust?
Consistency of purpose, right? So don't come to me when you want to sell me something. Don't come to me when it's, only in your best interest. If it's mutually beneficial, let's talk about it. I think that consistency of getting to know me, right, and not making assumptions about, who we are and what we desire, or what we know or may not know. So I think consistency is good, and respect is always important. And, one of the things we talk about internally is it's helpful for me to see folks who look like me as part of the organization. If I don't see that, I'm not really sure where your heart is, right? Because we can always talk about equity and inclusion, but if I don't see myself reflected in your organization, I might think, oh, well, are those words, or do they have meaning behind them? So it takes work, right? It takes effort. But I also believe that we know this. This is not news, right? So the same things that would instill trust when you have a working relationship with someone, it's the same thing for people of color, as an example. We have those same kinds of hopes and dreams, and we want those to be respected. So it's ongoing and it's continuous, and I think consistency is important. So don't just come to me when you need something. Keep that relationship going. And that's not a bank, that's not a Berkshire Bank response, that's the Angela Dixon response.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again.